Mówiono najważniejsze sprawy w dalszym rozwojem według AI. Omówiono najważniejsze sprawy.
Welcome to Life Sucks Radio. And why does life suck this week?
Well, life sucks this week because adults can't cope with their shitty lives by blowing things up.
But it wasn't always this way. When I was a kid, that's all I did. At around 3 a.m., I started to reminisce about the old days of, trying to blow up everything in school.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
So I wasn't always this upstanding, mature nobleman that you see today. Oh, I went through it all as a kid. I pretty much invented what is now known as teen angst. No, really, I think I invented detention in my school at one point, or at least this extended day program that we used to have. But I was up at like 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep, twisting and turning, and I started thinking of things that I haven't thought about in a long time, like wow, why do how come my math skills suck to this day? I have like a stigma with math. I can't even like balance a checkbook without hearing Mr. LaGuardia, my math teacher from middle school. Nice guy who had a really thick English accent, and I never understood a goddamn thing he said for 2 years straight, right? So every time I'll be like writing out the check or whatever, then balance the checkbook, and I'll be like, I'll hear his voice, Michael, did you forget to carry the 2 again? And by the way, did you and Jerry blow up the bathroom? And I'd say, what do you mean did I blow up the bathroom? No, you saw me. I went to the bathroom, but I came back and I was sitting here when the bombs went off. That's true. And then the principal would come in. Is Michael Rocco in this room? And Mr. LaGuardia would say, well, no, he was here, sir. He was here the whole time. He didn't do nothing wrong. And the moment the principal left, he'd look at me and say, did you blow up the bathroom? And meanwhile, I did. I went to the bathroom, and what he didn't know was I had a cigarette fuse. I took a few drags and then put the other end of the cigarette into the fuse of a bunch of Blockbusters or whatever, put it behind the toilet, and then casually walked back to the room. So within 10 minutes, everything explodes and everyone's screaming.
Oh my God, you are so fucked up.
I can laugh about it now. I can laugh now about this. Nobody got hurt, but can you imagine? I was 12. I mean, how many 12-year-olds do you know get up in the middle of the night at like 1 o'clock in the morning on a school night, sneak downstairs and out the door, and call a taxi to pick me up and drive me all the way to the other side of town to my friend's house? We would just kind of lay out and look up at the sky and just talk about everything all night, about the Gulf War or whatever was going on at the time. Smoke our cigarettes, our cheap Camel cigarettes, and then I would call a cab and come back home again and sneak back upstairs. And my parents had no idea what was going on. There was no supervision. And I think my father was even like sleeping downstairs on the couch too. And I went right past him like nothing.
At 12 years old?
I was 12 and I was doing this stuff, right? And that was that. So by the time I think 8th grade came along, I was full blown into, if you're a kid who couldn't find acceptance with like the preppy kids or the popular, the jocks or whatever, you kind of gravitate towards other things. And I think the metalhead group, or as we called it, the dirtbags, they'll come at you with open arms, man. Like if you've got explosives or if you've got like dead fish that you can hide up in the ceiling tiles in a stairwell,
oh my God,
so that nobody knows where that horrible smell is coming from for weeks, and they have to power hose the walls and try to figure out what it is. That's what you do. So in 9th grade, this is where it really got bad, because my friends and I, we were monsters. We were terrors. And I remember my friends and I trying to flip over the security car with the security guard inside it His name was Rudy. I always remember this because he let us smoke cigarettes out in the courtyard. In the early 90s, you can actually still smoke cigarettes as a student outside in the courtyard. That was apparently okay.
So to thank him.
So me and my friends, it was like 10 of us, and we were like lifting this car on its side, and he was about to go over. And then, of course, everyone chickens out, and I look over, and it's like 3 of us left. So we're like, oh. So we put the car down, but we had it halfway up, and we were basically trying to kill the poor guy who had a family.
Hey, high school security guard, he knew what he was signing up for.
But before I move on to high school, the principals of middle school at that time, there were the 2 guys. There was Mr. Giamo and Mr. O'Connell. It was Jeremy and Tom. We called them Tom and Jerry. Now, Mr. O'Connell was this old school Irish guy. They were both huge, like tall guys to us, Mr. O'Connell was always very nice to me, but he had that Irish temper thing where like 1 minute he's really nice to you, and literally a second later he'll flip a switch and start screaming at you and turn red and like clutch his chest and stuff. And Mr. Giamo, now he was a different sort. He was just a dick. Now looking back, I understand kind of why he was a dick, but he was old school, man. And he would one time he finally had enough, and he just said, "Michael, you're staying after school today." And he called my mother, and she came in and they searched my locker for explosives. and of course, luckily for me, my locker was a pigsty, and I had papers piled up high, so they couldn't even find the box of matches and cigarettes that I had in there. But in high school, the principal that I had, the assistant principal, Mr. Levine, was actually a really good guy. And in fact, in Hauppauge, I had a lot of great teachers too, in middle school and in high school. Like some of the best teachers I ever had were there. College, things change. The passion is not quite there with professors as it is with high school and middle school teachers. But anyway, so Mr. Levine, who had a sensitive side, would call me in his office pretty much every day. In fact,
let it out.
I think I set like a world record of being included in the morning announcements in school for like years straight. So every morning they do the morning announcement and say, "Will the following students please report to the main office?" Michael, Rocco. It was pretty much every day for a while. But Mr. Levine, I would go to his office and he'd just sit there and he'd level with me. He'd say, "Listen, Michael, the next time your friends tell you to cut class and hang out in the courtyard, just tell them, fuck you." Now, at 14 and 15, that was amazing. This guy, this respectable man of stature, right, of high stature, he was cursing. It was the coolest thing. Eventually I did listen to him. By 10th grade, I turned everything around. I was getting straight A's, and I actually enjoyed the feeling of accomplishment. And I
Really?
was, wow, what, self-esteem? What's that? Like,
Who knew?
I'm impressing my teachers? Oh, wow, that feels good. But until that point, we still have to get through freshman year, where I ended up getting 1 credit at the end of the year for 1 class. But anyway, so every time I saw Mr. Levine after that day, I'd see him in the main office and say, "Hey, Mr. Levine, fuck you." And he would be like, "Shh, stop. And I think he actually got fired, from what I understand. He was like fired or something, and it was probably my fault somehow. And I think a year or 2 ago, we were in the city. We were coming back from like a Broadway play or whatever it was. It was late at night. We were on the train, and I saw him, Mr. Levine. I saw him, and I think he noticed me too. I didn't say anything to him, but he was sitting on the train, and he was in work clothes, and he had a little satchel, and I felt so bad, because of course they would have fired him. He actually cared, he really cared about the hard cases, and I wasn't a bad kid. Yeah, I blew up everything, and I had a certain group of friends. It got bad for a while. A certain group of friends. Now, some kids are just juvenile delinquents, right? And going through their phases like I was. And then there are other kids who are just bad seeds. And there was one group of friends who they were the ones the motorheads who had all the dirt bikes and the quads. And we would have BB gun wars in the woods. We would shoot each other.
Oh, good.
And they would skin animals. They would shoot and kill raccoons and squirrels and skin them and nail them to their walls. These were my friends. And I was involved with this crap for a while, and I guess they were the badasses. They were the tough guys. And back then, in the early 90s, kids looked different, didn't they? Right? And even and earlier than that. Today's kids, they look like kids, right? But back then, at least to me, these guys were, some of these seniors were like 21 and they were like 7 feet tall, and they had leather biker jackets and full beards and glasses, and they were scary dudes, and they liked me. So what do? You start hanging out with them, and you blow things up, and people call the cops on you. And but it wasn't all bad. There were good times too. I'll never forget when I was in middle school. I'll never forget when my friend Jim, he was 2 years older than me, and he was in a rock band, like a metal band. And I thought that was so amazing. And he said, "Yeah, come audition." Okay, so I show up with my crappy Memphis guitar. I sounded like crap. I couldn't play or tune my guitar to save my life. And he said, "Hey, Rocco, you're in." To this day, I love thinking of that, because it was such a nice memory, and they were good times. But it wasn't always that way, obviously. In the summer after 8th grade, right before high school started, I was really depressed. I was trying to make sense of what was going on at home. I was very, I guess I was just doing a cry for help type of thing. I was acting all suicidal and whatever. And I decided that maybe it's a good idea that I check myself into a mental institution. Yeah, that's what I need. A vacation. It'll be great. I'll get to hang out with other kids like me that are in there and talk about our family problems and school and music and stuff. And so I packed up my bags, and I made my mixtapes of, Concrete Blonde and Iron Maiden and whatever, and I had all my photos of my mother and my cats, so the moment I got to South Oaks Hospital and they locked the door behind me, I quickly realized, oh, that's not what this is going to be at all. And they took my shoelaces so I wouldn't try to hang myself. They took my radio and my mixtapes away. They took my photos of my mother and my cats and locked me in a room with other older kids. It was a suicide observation room where there's windows watching you and cameras at all time, and the lights blaring above you all night long while you try to sleep. And it was pretty scary stuff, man. Oh yeah, I was scared. I was 14, and I was scared to death of that place. And whatever ego or whatever teen angst or badass I thought I was, like whatever, it was gone in seconds. I was a stripped down, frightened child. And this was not, when you think of mental institutions, you think of like One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest. Yeah, it was kind of like that, but scarier in that a lot of the guys that were there, yeah, there were the juveniles like me who were good kids. They were just mixed up, right? Confused. But then there were the criminals who, I guess, to avoid a prison sentence, chose the option to go there instead. So yeah, there were fights and bad things going on all the time. And I was only there for about a week. And like most kids, I was resilient and I adapted. And before you know it, I was playing checkers with the psychos, and I was trading my shampoo bottles for cigarettes and whatever kids do. And
kids play stickball.
And even to the point where there were times when I remember laughing late at night because some guy would start farting inside the ventilation shafts, and it would echo out the whole building, and we would all be dying and stuff. But I also was begging. You get one phone call a day, kind of like prison. And I was begging my parents, please get me out of here. Get me out of here. I'm not going to kill myself, So the day after I was released, high school began. Oh yeah, 9th grade started the day after. So by the time I entered senior year of high school, obviously things had changed. I was getting straight A's. I was going to class. And you know that the difference between freshman year and senior year for a kid, it's like a million years.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But in my case, I grew up a little too quickly. Because kids, the one thing you can't teach young people and make them understand is that, like Neil Peart says from Rush, you're only immortal for a limited time. And it is true. And young people don't understand that. They have the fountain of youth and they don't even know it. So while other kids were going to the senior prom, I, at the time, was living with a girlfriend already. And we didn't go to prom. Instead, we were driving away from the cops because her family was abusive, and I physically rescued her from their clutches. And in our Camaro, we drove into the night and hid out into sleazy motels and went to a diner, and neither of us could eat food. These are the things you remember, and other kids were at prom.
These are not the things I remember.
By college, things had changed again. So what's the point of all this? What? There are some funny memories, and looking back, I wasn't a bad seed. I was just very confused and immature, and didn't really have role models. I did outside of my house, but not really at home. And I think, is it good that kids go through their rebellious teens? Because I did have a college professor once say something, and I never forgot it. She said, "Be weary of responsible youth." And that always stuck with me, because I do see that today. People that were on the straight and narrow their entire lives, right? There were kids that were the normal students that never did anything wrong, always did what they were told. Even today, I see some of these people online, and they have the same haircut they had in middle school, the same clothes. So on the one hand, I go, well, I envy them because they grew up at a more healthy place, and they were doing what you're supposed to do in school. They're going out for the school plays, and you're going to the prom, like I said. But then there were the other kids like me who kind of got it out of the way early. The phase, right? The rebellious phase kind of got out of the way. We were going to the metal concerts, and we would go to like the Roxy Music Hall in Huntington. That place was scary. And we'd go see Overkill and Testament and Deicide, and all the death metal bands would be there. And I was like 15, and we would be getting into brawls. It wasn't a mosh pit anymore. These scrawny little kids were having these skinhead gangs swinging at us, and it was horrible. And yet it shaped me, because today, by the way, as I said, I do this show and I vent and complain and blah, 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 but it is a show. Most of the time, I'm a normal dude like everybody else. I'm
No, you're not.
kind of cool, laid back, and just go about my day. And so I'm not always whining, but I always try to think of things for the show. And I'll say, oh, this happened on Tuesday. I got to remember to put that in. But it's amazing how we evolve as human beings, isn't it? The phases of our lives and the chapters we close and open. And for all the things I complain about and the stresses I have, real world adult stresses today, to be honest, I don't think I would change what's going on now in a million years. I would never want to go back to those days again. And there's always that part of me that wants to grab a hold of that young kid. Now, it depends on the year. If it's the 12-year-old Michael, I want to put my arm around him and tell him it's going to be okay. It won't always be this way. Good things are coming. Wait till you meet your wife. If only I had a crystal ball to show you, to see the things you'll complain about later, you're going to long for. But then if I saw the 15-year-old version of me, I'd like to throw him against the wall, smack him around a bit, and tell him to get his ass to class and cut his hair. You can wear the Iron Maiden t-shirt, but cut your hair.
All right, shut up a minute. Here are the Roccos with Why Try? Why do we even try to always do what's right? And everything that you deserve, they'll give to someone else. Why do we seek the truth? It's never what we want. Too afraid to live without the lies that we were taught. The more I search for answers, the more This is Conan with Hawk as Weapon.
that's it for this week's show. Bye-bye.